Welcome, everybody, to Sia Nejad Sports. I got a very special guest tonight, a very, very special guest tonight. Somebody that I have been working with for quite some time now, and a big influence on me and my career, frankly. I'm going to just introduce him right now instead of just beating around the bush. It's none other than the coach at the Coach Rules on Twitter and Instagram. Coach, I just saw you. How's it going?
It's going great. And I got to be honest with you. I feel warm. I feel excited. The fact that I'm one of the first few guests. Now, I can't say I'm the first, so that offends me just a little bit. But I know it's all about schedule. So I love what you're doing. You know I'm your biggest fan. And this is very, very important because what you're doing is really important because you're changing your career. You're leaning into what you should be doing anyway. And there's a lot of people out there, whether they're coming out of college, whether they're a professional at 30, 35 years of age, and they're like, man, maybe I want to go do something else that I truly enjoy. So this is really important content. I'm thrilled to be here.
So that's the thing, right? So I think obviously people don't know what Sia Nejad Sports is all about because it was just a website I launched, Coach, like literally a week and a half ago, with the help of a friend of mine named James, who has been helping me out with the website development. And it's barely built out. I've got some stuff on there. I've got some media, and I've got this interview is going to be on there, Coach, and I'm going to cut it up and do all kinds of cool things. Eventually, I'm going to have a live chat function. The point, though, is this is truly going to be to motivate and inspire people. And I'm just going to have content on there that kind of picks people up and gets them to take maybe that first step, if not their last step. Because a lot of people, Coach, as you know, they take the first step and then they get bored or they get discouraged and they don't take further steps to kind of finish the job. And that's why you're such a perfect guest, because your trajectory, your career trajectory is unique, for one. And it's, you are just the bastion, the model of success to a lot of people in this industry. And by the way, a lot of people, in my opinion, in any industry. So I just thought it would be really good to have you on and just kind of provide some of your insight. And we'll talk about some sage advice, of course, but I just really want to talk about your career at first and maybe some of the influences that you've had in your career. So that's kind of go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love talking about this kind of stuff because in 2023, right here, right now, everything has changed. And we joke a lot. You and I play around a lot. But the bottom line is this matters to me. And it has always mattered to me. And the fact that I'm different and I've made it to this point in so many different places, it matters. And so things like this are as important to me as anything I ever do.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate everybody being in the chat. Alan Bell. So for those of you that don't know, so Coach, I got to tell you, some people don't know what I'm up to these days. So I'm transitioning to where Coach is right now, into media, and I have shows every day with Coach. Coach and I work very closely together. And Alan Bell in the chat, he and I work very closely together. I do a lot of work for a lot of different outfits, but mainly for CBS Sports and Sportsline, where we do all kinds of, we do a lot of gambling picks and we do stuff like that, but we do a lot of just education and entertaining and things like that as well. So I appreciate everybody being in the chat. I see you in there, Michael Raziel. Coach, let's start with your career, though.
Yeah.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm probably going to leave some stuff out, okay? WWE, that's where a lot of people know you from, right? Right.
Yep.
Okay. The PGA Tour, most recently, PGA Tour, CBS Sports, ESPN prior to that.
Yeah.
Am I leaving any sort of like big years out here?
Well, no, you're not, because I had to say my career has been unique would be an understatement, but I'm very proud of it. I kind of feel like there were several different points very early on that if I would have made a different decision, I would not be sitting here with you right now. The normal trajectory is you go to local TV and you try to work your way up to ESPN. That's what most sportscasters want to do. I was the same way. The only problem is I happened to be in a building when a professional wrestler tragically fell from the Raptors and died. And that's how it all changed for me. And that's why I tell people all the time, you never know when your life is going to be changed, but you got to be ready to embrace it. So I'm in the building, and then I'm on the nightly news. I'm on Good Morning America. I'm on Larry King Live. And all of a sudden, 3 months later, I'm in Kansas City. I'd only been there for 4 months. I'm 22, 23 years old, Sia. And all of a sudden, I'm getting an offer from the WWE. And that changed everything for me. So I've been on national television since I was 23 years old. And so I know that I have an issue with hoping people are at the level that I believe that I'm at. But now I've also changed to where I want to pick people up. I love talking to classes. I love talking to schools. I love talking to professionals because I'm different. And a lot of people say, I can't do this because I'm different. Well, that's not true. It's about the dedication, the work, the knowledge, everything you put into it. So for me, WWE is kind of where it started nationally. 10 years there, a full decade at ESPN, and now the last 5 at CBS and the PGA Tour. So I'm incredibly proud of my career. I'm incredibly proud of where I've been, but I'm most excited about where I'm going because I tell people this all the time. I've never had more fun and have more respect for the people I work with, including yourself, than I have right here, right now at CBS. And I don't tell you that to pump up your ego. You know what we talk about behind the scenes. You know that the number one priority for me right now is to get you locked in full time before somebody else scoops you up, because that's how good you are. And so that's why what you're doing right now, it's not easy to do when you've done one thing and you want to switch to another, but you're doing it the right way. You're hustling. You're working extra hours. You've got to earn your living and then come over here and do this. So I respect it, but people understand that you got to put in extra time if you're switching something. You can't put in 8 hours a day and go, now I want to go be a sportscaster. It doesn't work that way. You got to put the work in, and I've put the work in.
You know, one word that just struck me right there was at the beginning there, you mentioned the word different. And I think, okay, so there's a couple things that go into success, and we could spend hours into some of the sort of the basic skills that you need to employ to be successful. In my opinion, of course, hard work is there, perseverance, making sure you don't only take step one, but you take the final step as well. I think that's people get lost in the middle somewhere because they get discouraged. We can talk about that later on. And I want to address more of your career in a second as well. But I feel like being different is really important, really in all facets, whether it's marketing or career trajectory, because if you go the conventional route and you're always going the conventional route, you just fall in line with everybody else that's trying to do the exact same thing you are. So in this media world we're in, and I think you present so differently as well. I mean, it's not different to anybody because you've been around so long, but the energy that you have, it's different than most people. The sense of humor that you have, like everything, it's just you're kind of just a couple steps, a couple levels above everybody else, in my opinion. And so I just think that whole different thing is important. When you see somebody coming up to, whether it was ESPN or the WWE or CBS Sports, you see somebody coming up, it's true, right? That you're probably going to notice the guy that's a little unconventional, that's a little outside the social norm of whatever that job is.
It's funny because part of my day job when I was in the WWE, yes, I was a talent. Yes, I got in the ring. Yes, I hosted Monday Night Raw and Smack. I did all of that over the course of my 10-year career. But during the day, which most people don't realize, is I ran a room called the pre-tapes room. I was in charge of doing all the interviews, character development. Young guys would come in and we'd work on stuff because people don't understand. You don't just create a character and all of a sudden you're a success. And all of a sudden you're the Undertaker, you're Triple H, you're The Rock, you're Stone Cold Steve Austin. That takes development. It takes a good idea. It takes luck. And so I was able for 10 years in my 20s, be able to hone that, be able to see and kind of say, well, that person has it, that person doesn't. I don't understand, especially in 2023, people not being honest with other people. What I mean by that is tell people, A, that's not good, or B, that's not good enough. You're not insulting them, you're telling them. And so whether it's The Rock, because I have 2 people in my life that almost every single day I use something they taught me. WWE, it was The Rock, no question. He taught me about timing. He taught me about understanding that, and I think you can admit this, that every single day, it doesn't matter the show, the time, whatever, I bring 100%. And I expect everybody else to bring it too. And if you don't, I have a problem with that. The reason I'm that way is that The Rock, at his height, I said to him all the time, I said, it must be incredible to be you. He goes, yeah, sometimes, but I'm on the road 28, 30 days a month. It gets kind of old being me. And this is The Rock, right? Because wrestling schedule is brutal. And if you break through and you become a big time star, they're asking you to do all kinds of stuff every single day. You never go home, but you have to buy into it because you only have a short period of time if you want to make all that money and become what The Rock became, right? But he taught me, if there's one person that is watching the show tonight or is seeing me for the first time, I want them to remember me. I want them to remember what we did. I want them to remember that they also can come. I mean, think about some of the stuff The Rock did. It does. If you smell what does that mean? It doesn't matter. What does that mean? It was all stuff that people got into that made no sense. because it was different. So it's The Rock on one side, and then it was Stuart Scott on the other side, because Stuart Scott was the epitome of being different. And he was told when he got to ESPN, can't be this way. You got to conform. You got to be normal. You can't, booyah! You can't do any of that. I was told the exact same thing. I've been very open that certain executives at ESPN, they didn't want me there. They never met me, didn't know me, didn't want me. Why? Simply because I'd been in professional wrestling, for no other reason than that. So one of the things I'm most proud of, Sia, is that I broke through. I got hired even though certain guys didn't want me there. And now, ever since I was the first one, we've seen talent after talent after talent go from professional wrestling or some other form of entertainment and come to ESPN or some other big network. So I feel like I helped open the door. I'm proud of that. And people need to understand you got to bang, 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 bang. Because I was told no for 3 years. I was stuck in the WWE. I was tired of traveling. I was tired of all of it. I couldn't get out until I did. And then the last 15 years has been amazing since I left the WWE. So you've got to pound the door down if it's something you truly want to do. And it's everything for me. This business is everything to me.
You either pound the door down or you don't. And if you don't, you've already failed, right? You haven't done anything. So you may as well pound the door down and fail that way as opposed to not doing anything at all. Stuart Scott, that strikes a chord to me, Coach, because, growing up, both of us growing up, I think it was probably Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann that we first sort of might have said, or Charlie Steiner on SportsCenter. But then it became the Stuart Scott show in large part. And I'm probably leaving a couple names out, but when it comes to SportsCenter anchors, I mean, he was the guy for a minute.
Him and Rich Eisen, they were partners.
Rich Eisen, of course.
Yeah.
And I just, it's interesting because you're reflecting on, it sounds to me like some conversations you all had. Did he give you any sort of insight in terms of stuff that might have helped your career beyond ESPN or through your time at ESPN?
No question. The funny part, we connected over divorces, to be honest with you, because he went through a divorce a few years before I did. And, every divorce is different. It sucks. It's not easy, but you can try to get good things that come out of it. So there'd be many times. And because I did the late SportsCenter, I loved the late SportsCenter. I would go into work around 5 or 6 in the evening. So I got to see my kids after school, and they were young at the time. My daughter had just been born when I started at ESPN in 2008. So I got to be home all day, and then I worked from like 6 to 2 a.m. There's nothing more fun, I can tell you, Sia, than calling SportsCenter when it's just highlight. But in order to be able to do those late night shows, you got to be able to call a highlight. And there are levels to that game. Stuart Scott was at the absolute top level. You got to hit the line correctly. He taught me sometimes laying out is okay, baby. That's what he used to always say. He goes, sometimes laying out is okay, baby. Meaning, let the play breathe. Let people see the football in the air and catch it down and go, then 81 yards for a score, 14-7 USC. Then second quarter. See what I'm talking about? See, you can do that, but you've got to be in the moment. The other thing he taught me, forget about the red light. Forget about the red light. What do I mean by that? Is that there's a saying in this business, when the red light is on, you need to be on. He goes, He and The Rock said the same thing. When the red light comes on, I'm just turning myself up 10 notches. And I think if people watch me, that's what I do. I feel like I'm the same guy, whether we're on the show or we're not on the show. And I try really, really hard. I tell my kids this all the time. Work really, really hard to make it look really, really easy. And I pride myself on that. Nobody sees me when I'm practicing in the mirror. And I tell the entire crew, practice in the mirror, work on your craft, get better, because you can't be stuck where you are. I want to be on Paramount Plus someday. I want to be on CBS Sports Network with The Early Edge someday. I'm not satisfied. So I don't want you to be satisfied. And you have to work at it. So for a guy who has the experience that I do, to still get up, Sia, and practice in the mirror all the time for my voice inflection, so that I don't just, I know I have a loud voice. So you have to learn to control it. So whatever your deficiencies are, if you don't work at them, how are you going to get better at them? And that's what Stuart used to always point out. He says, don't change who you are, but just refine who you are. Because I came from Monday Night Raw. I screamed for 10 years. You can't scream when you're doing a 1 a.m. SportsCenter all the time. And so I always remember that you got to be able to do this. Take your voice up, take your voice down, take your voice up, take your voice down. There's so many little things about being at the absolute highest level that nobody ever talks about because we're doing shows. But if you went to a class or if you went to something that I ran, I'm telling you, little details turn into big things. And right now, after so many years, it just comes naturally for me. And I love it more than anything.
So it also takes a high level of humility. By the way, before I get to this point, the Stuart Scott thing where he pauses in highlights, I need to go back and look at that film because, Coach, you know me, I'm talking a mile a minute. I'm trying to get my pick in. I'm trying to get my take in. I'm trying to be funny. I'm trying to be insightful. And sometimes I don't stop to pause and just let the moment breathe. So that's actually something I kind of want to go back and do, frankly, is watch some Stuart Scott highlights, whether that be on YouTube or somewhere else. But what I think is really interesting about what you said about practicing in the mirror is, Coach, you're at the top of the industry, right? It takes a certain level of humility for somebody at your height to say to himself on a daily basis, I need to continue to practice. I need to continue to get better. And I feel like that goes back to what The Rock was always talking to you about is he's constantly, it sounded to me like he was constantly working on his craft, regardless of whether he was at his height or not.
Well, and the reason he did that, it's very interesting because pro wrestling is kind of like pro sports. If Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, if they didn't constantly work to stay at the top of their game, there's a bunch of dudes coming right behind them to take their spot. During my time in the WWE, we had probably 15 to 20 guys that were main event level quality guys. What do I mean by that? We had 15 to 20 guys: Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Dudley Boy. I mean, you can go on and on. They were all there at the same time. So why were they so competitive if it's a scripted show? Because guess what? See, if you're in the main event at WrestleMania, you get a bonus of $1 million. So you're working all year to try to earn that spot. In TV, in pro wrestling, in sports, it's the same thing. So yeah. The Rock, who famously had $7 in his pocket when he left the Canadian Football League, had no vision of what he was going to do. It's why his production company is called $7 Production. It's because of that. A lot of people don't know that. And so he had no money in his pocket. And so he was paranoid. Like every pro wrestler is paranoid that somebody's going to take his spot. Even when he got red hot, and I'm telling you, Sia, people cannot even imagine. I was right with him for 2 straight years. It was me and him every time. I was his interviewer. He made fun of me. We'd mix it up. It was amazing. And people were like, oh, he used to clown you. Really? Would you have stood there and let The Rock clown you for 2 years? Of course you would have. Everybody would have. So it's always funny when people tease me. Yep. You're laughing at the guy that was standing there with The Rock. That's funny. But that's the way he was. And that's why he became such a good movie star and a big movie star, because he's never, his saying is be the hardest worker in the room. That's his moniker. And I believe that, because that's why I get up at 5 a.m. every single day. And he was so paranoid about not being in the main event. He wanted everybody watching him. He wanted all eyes on him. And I think in a lot of ways you have to be that way. But you use the word humble, and you use the word, you've got to know where you are. You kind of said that. And I know where I am. I know who I am. But I also want to be the absolute very best. And I want our show to be the absolute very best. I want the chat to be the absolute very best in sports betting. And that's what I try to accomplish, because he taught me that. I watched him do it. I watched him with fan after fan after fan after fan. And they were all important to him. Every single person I work with that's around me, it's important. And I think that's very important too, because when you get 20,000 different options, why are they choosing us? Why are they choosing you? Why are they choosing me? You got to make them. You got to make them want to do that. And that's kind of what it was like back then in pro wrestling.
So speaking of the chat, and this will probably be the last question, unless it just comes up extemporaneously on the WWE, because I don't want to make, even though I know everybody's super interested, this, Coach, about yourself, like people really want to just, hear some of the stories, maybe some of the insider stuff. Maybe if it comes out during the show, then so be it. But an interesting question from Joel Schreck in the chat, and I'm going to rephrase it because it's a little broad. He asks, Joel, a friend of mine, by the way, do you ever have any regrets from professional wrestling? So I'm going to rephrase that a little bit, unless you want to answer that question. But do you ever look back on your experience at the WWE and kind of wish something, whether it was your fault or not, wish something had gone a little bit different?
The entire experience, no, because I feel like the training I got there prepared me for anything in sports and sports entertainment because of what we were asked to do and how we were asked to do it. I mean, calling a basketball game is one thing. Calling Monday Night Raw with Vince McMahon screaming in your ear, that's completely another animal. And if you can do that, you can do anything. But I think what I regret sometimes is I didn't stand up for myself. And so now I tell people all the time, you got to stand up for yourself. What do I mean by that? I was asked to do a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. I was asked to go a lot of places I shouldn't have gone. And I went to Afghanistan twice, and it was supposed to be an optional trip. My daughter's being born. My ex-wife didn't want me to go. I got a beat down for that. That's regrettable.
Mm-hmm.
I still wouldn't have gone, but I should have stood up for myself. I should not have taken a tombstone pile driver after the show from The Undertaker to punish me for not going to Afghanistan because my ex-wife was pregnant and she had anxiety about me going to a war zone. Right? So those things are regrettable to me. But other than that, I wouldn't be sitting here right now without it. I wouldn't have my children without the WWE. So overall, no regrets. But there are some within the 10 years that I certainly have. Sure.
So let me ask you this, just kind of getting past some of your career stuff. There's a lot of people, and I think some people are starting to realize I'm doing this new venture, and it's not something I'm monetizing, by the way. It's just something I really want to do, the SiaNejadSports.com thing. And, I really ultimately want it to be kind of a live place where I can, mentor people to the extent people want my advice. I get people reaching out to me all the time on Twitter. And there was actually somebody that reached out to me today, something like kind of touching, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure this person is watching today. I'm not going to talk about him specifically, but I want to talk about people who are trying to get into this industry or just trying to achieve any goal. I feel like, and I talked to Greg Ducharme about this last week during our first show, and I feel like a lot of people take that first or second step and they have this great idea and they're super enthusiastic about it. But for whatever reason, they decide by day 3, week 3, or maybe sometimes year 3, it's time, maybe year 3, it is time to maybe turn the page, but they decide pretty quick, this isn't for me. Like life takes over. Social norms dictate that I should actually be doing this, not doing this, whether that be change a job or do something that you've been told you're too old to do. And by the way, all those things apply to me. Mm-hmm. Just to remind everybody, I don't think anybody really knows my story, but just to remind everybody, Coach, before I get your advice on this, I was an attorney in Richmond in Virginia for 3 years. And then I decided to move down to Florida without even having taken the bar or having, because you can't transfer. You have to take the bar all over again when you come to Florida. And so I didn't have any job lined up. I didn't have the bar. I had about $30K in credit card debt. So it's not like mommy and daddy were helping me out. Like, I had things to resolve. And I just thought, like, this is the move for me to make. And I ended up passing the bar, got a job, practiced law for 10 years. And then I decided, well, I'm going to jump out of law and I'm going to do pharma. And then I decided, well, I'm going to jump out of pharma and I'm going to do media full time. And along the way, I got a lot of criticism, a lot of negative feedback. I got positive feedback too, don't get me wrong. But it's just one of those things where I feel like people may not get negative feedback initially. Maybe they get it later in the game. But what's your advice to those people who have taken the steps, but they just haven't gotten to where they want to go yet? How do you get them to take that extra step and continue to persevere?
Most people don't have that gene. I literally talked to my kids about this today. I want people to hear this and hear this clearly. There has never been a better time or a harder time for a normal person to get into the media. The way you're doing it is the really smart way of doing it. But most people, when you work a full-time job, the last thing you want to do is come home and then create something on your own, especially if you have a wife, kids, girlfriend, whatever the case might be. This seems very simple and trite and basic, but you got to finish it. And if you're starting a podcast, because now there is no separation. I talk to Buckets about this all the time. I said, you're not the guy that you were a year ago that played with his dog and is funny and everybody likes. I said, you're now a public figure. There needs to be a line between you and the public. But because of that, the public now has an opportunity to be like Buckets, to be like EC, because Buckets was just a guy. And now look what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so my point is, but you've got to feed into it. You've got to use social media. You've got to use anything at your fingertips. And also, there's a lot of schools now that you can go to. There was one 10 minutes from where I lived in ESPN, the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. They had night classes. Dan Patrick has a School of Broadcasting down. It's called Full Sail down in Orlando. You can go at night. You can take things online. You have to have a tape. And there's a lot of talented people out there. But if you're never seen, does the tree really fall in the forest? That's what you have to ask yourself. You've got to go above and beyond, because guess what? You're going to compete with people like me, people like you, and we're already here, and we're not going anywhere. And I joke all the time with the people I see coming out of college, I'm going to work till I'm 90 because they're not ready. You also have professors. Also remember this. I encourage people to go outside of your class, because I've met a lot of professors that will ask me to come speak to their class, and I don't want to insult them, but I'll ask them just in casual conversation, what do you know about podcasting? What do you know about streaming? What do you know about radio on TV that does both at the same time to double your income for doing the same amount of work? Most of them don't know anything about that, because they're teaching stuff from 30 or 40 years ago when TV was the main thing. It's not the main thing anymore. And so I would encourage you to think outside the box, get truly educated, watch stuff like this, people that are doing it. I once had most places will hire talent coaches, right? So I had one when I was really young, 22, and I'm still in local TV, and I'm sitting down, and she's trying to change everything about me. So I asked her, I said, well, if you know so much about being a talent, and I admittedly, see, I was a smart ass back in the day.
No way.
Bigger than now. Yes, admittedly.
No, come on.
And here's the deal, is that I used to think because most talent coaches are failed talents. They couldn't do it. So then they wanted to stay in the media and they want to tell other people how to do it. Well, if you couldn't do it, then why are you telling me how to do it? And I've always had that issue. I'm talking about at the highest level, because I say it all the time on Early Edge. You know this. I say there are levels to this game. If you want to be in market 200 Topeka, Kansas, go make your $22,000 a year. If you want to be able to afford a family and have a career doing this, then you got to go above and beyond that. And it's hard when you're 30 or 35 or 40 to make that jump. But if you truly want to do it and you have a passion, don't just tweet, hey, I got a pick, like everybody else does. I get 1 million tweets a day from somebody with 18 followers saying, hey, coach, I got this pick tonight. It's not what it's about. Put in the work, do the videos, post, and understand that it's going to take you between 1 and 5 years if you want to get a competitive paycheck in the world of media. Like right now, if we're being transparent, CBS should be lining up at your door. And because of different things, sometimes you have to be patient to be full-time, I'm talking about. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but quitting, that's what most people do, because they're like, nobody's paying attention to me. Well, if you truly have the talent and somebody sees it, that's all you need. You need one person. Only one person liked me enough to hire me at ESPN. One. Without her, I'm never at ESPN. It only takes one.
It's interesting too, because I think we're sort of in a world now where everything comes quick, or at least that's the perception. And it's at our fingertips, right? You know what? We message somebody, they message us right back. We want to picture something, we want to find out something on Google, we get it right back. And then what we see is success stories across Instagram and whatever social media platform you want to name. And it's like, oh man, this person, they started a YouTube channel and they started making $200,000 a month, talking about Microsoft Excel or unwrapping gifts or whatever it is. And so now we have trained ourselves, if not brainwashed ourselves, to think, well, if I'm not accomplishing it quickly, then I'm not going to accomplish it. And so we need to slow down a little bit and understand that, especially something like this, it's most industries, frankly. I mean, you can get lucky on TikTok or YouTube. That's great. But that's like, a high school football player saying,
exactly,
I'm going to go to the NFL. Like, the chances are slim there, guys. So the point is, you have to kind of take a more realistic approach. And that's not what we see the realistic approach is not the few results we see on Instagram and social media. It's just kind of going through the motions, being different. And again, coach, this is the biggest thing, setting yourself apart. That's why I love what you just said about watching shows that are successful, like The Early Edge, for example, which for anybody that doesn't know that's listening, that's a show that Coach and I and a bunch of other people from CBS Sports and Sportsline do every single day, multiple times a day. But yeah, you got to watch those shows, because that's where you're going to learn how to be different, how to be energetic, how to be charismatic, and how to give good picks at the same time.
You know what's crazy is that I did Mike and Mike probably 50 to 60 times during my career at ESPN. I did First Take 40 to 50 times during my career. And after the first couple, when I was just excited to be there, then I had to start learning, because I ultimately thought that at ESPN I would have my own show someday. And I did have my own radio show, but I wanted my own TV show. And that's part of the reason I left in 2017, because after 10 years, I was a great B player. You can do First Take, but not when Stephen A's there. You can do Mike and Mike, but not when Greeny's there. So I would always do it with Golick or whoever was filling in for Golick. But the one thing I learned from Greeny is he is a master host. Do I think he's worth $7 million a year? I don't care. I don't care about the money. I mean, everybody wants to have that one contract. You dream about it when you get to ESPN or whatever. You're like, man, just give me that one contract with that mega money. But most people will never get that. So I set myself realistically, and I still had financially, compared to a lot of people, a great career. Have I made millions? I mean, I guess over 20 years I have, but not per year. But I learned how to do it correctly. So then, as I'm getting different opportunities within ESPN, and you never know when they're going to come. When you're at such a big network, you could get a call from, I would get a call, hey, we want you to do NBA this year. So for 2 years, I did NBA Tonight. Hey, we want you to do MMA now. So for 3 years, I went to every pay-per-view, and that's when Conor McGregor was coming up. So I got to see every Conor McGregor fight, and then I would do the live shots afterwards. So all those things I just described to you, studio work, right? On-site camera work without a teleprompter, having to write my own stuff, doing sports that a lot of people don't know, so I've got to write everything myself. And I also had to have the knowledge of the NBA, of college basketball, of MMA. Anything I'm doing, I have to be the expert, because people are watching. They're watching me. They're watching ESPN. So to me, you've got to have knowledge that's above reproach. And it's not throwing some opinion on Twitter or Instagram saying, no, your pick was wrong. I'm not talking about that. You've got to be able to have the knowledge to know what the pick is going to be. Can you name all 32 NBA teams? Can you name every NFL team and mascot? Can you name every Major League Baseball team and mascot? Can you name the big players in every sport? You got to have the knowledge before you can do the work. Yeah. And if you're not even willing to do that, then don't even bother. But if you're serious about it, there's a lot of people out there like myself who will help you get to the promised land. There's nothing I enjoy more than seeing somebody with talent and helping them get to the promised land. It is so fulfilling for me. I can't even tell you.
I think that's what people don't understand. And I'm guilty of this too. I'm guilty of, over my careers, if you will, not asking for help when I very well could have. I think what people don't understand, Coach, and I get this from David Meltzer a lot too, who's going to be on this show March 1st, by the way. For those of you that follow David Meltzer, super amazing entrepreneur, motivational speaker, all of those things. But gratitude. Like, we revel in the fact that we can help people. I'm thankful for the fact that I can help people. There was a guy who, again, the same person that I'm referencing, that sent me a really long Twitter message about, and I can say what it was about because I'm not revealing his name, but it was about how, alcohol has been kind of a downfall for him. He just broke up with his girlfriend. He feels very lonely. He feels like he's let people down. Within this, he acknowledged that alcohol was a problem. That there were certain things that he needed to correct. He just didn't know how to do it. And I tried to give him as much advice as I could short term. And I plan to work with him in the future.
Awesome.
But the larger point is, I actually enjoy that. He thinks he's bothering me. Mm-hmm. And if I see it and I have time to address it, I'm going to address it, because I'm very thankful for that. And so I think people, when they ask for help, they don't realize that you're actually you're helping me by asking for help, frankly.
You know what's crazy is that when we started the Early Edge, the reason it happened in the first place is because of COVID. And I had 3 or 4 amazing jobs, and they all went away because they were all traveling jobs. And we remember travel just stopped. So after playing the pity party for a week, I had to tell myself, what is going to work? And I'm dead serious when I tell you this story. I sat in my own house, which is different than the one I'm in right now. And I said, what will work? And I started to piece things together. We came up with the Early Edge. This will be fantastic. Sports betting, it's booming. But why will it work if we're all doing it remotely? Well, what happened during COVID? Sia? People were isolated. People got lonely. Anxiety about losing a job and where's the next one? Because for the first time in our lives, we had nowhere to go. If I got fired at ABC in New York City, I can go down the street and work at CBS. That wasn't the case 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so all of those things is why the early edge is a success, because we include people. What do I say all the time at the end of the show? I say we grind for you so we can win with you. And I mean that in every sense of the word, because I like to think about everybody sitting at home who takes the time, and it means something to me, takes the time, because our time's important, to watch us, to listen to us, to trust us, but to enjoy us. And that's why I try to include so many people in the chat. If they write something that's funny, I want to tell the world, because this isn't just a betting show. To me, this is, I say, crew, family, whatever it is, because I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And I know that's kind of sobering, but between wrestling, between COVID, I've lost a lot of friends. And so I don't know how long I'm going to be here. So damn it, as long as I'm here, I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to help, and we're going to do something positive in this space. And that's how Early Edge has got to where it is. And that's how we're going to continue to grow. We have to all be together, because now we've never been more far apart.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because, we sometimes have literally thousands of people watching at a time. And I think they feel like they're part of the family. And Coach, I think you cultivated that. I mean, obviously others have cultivated that with you, like AB. And like, I like to think I've played a part there too, but that's not a show. I think people think like, oh, they're just saying that, but they don't really mean it. Like, no, we actually mean it. Like to me at least, and I know to you, it feels like it's a big family, and that's not just the personalities on the show. And I feel like the chat on the Early Edge, they recognize that, and that's why they keep coming back. Of course, they're coming back for the good picks and all that, but they're coming back for that as well.
It's so funny, because the other day I was just kind of sitting around, and I was thinking to myself, and I just started laughing, because I said, I started my national career working with The Rock, who's now the biggest movie star in the world. Then I went to the biggest place in the world, ESPN. I did the biggest branded show, SportsCenter, for several years at ESPN. And yet I'm now having more fun working with people we call Big Cheesy 707. I'm like, how did I get here? If you would have told me 10 years ago, Coach, your job now is going to be this, and this is going to be what you're, and you would have just wrote out some of the things that I've said, I've been like, my career's over. I mean, what happened to me? But it's really, really cool how things can happen. And I feel like because of what I've done, I'm a great leader for the brand, but then trying to build everybody up within the brand. I say it all the time, and I want people to hear me. If you're one of those people watching right now that is thinking about changing your career or changing your trajectory, focus on your brand within the brand. So I talk to Sia all the time behind the scenes, because I truly believe this, and I don't care if you're sitting here or not, I'm going to say it. He is one of the most talented people I've ever worked with in my career. And I do not believe in anybody more than I believe in that guy sitting right here, which is why he's going to be with me for the next 25 years, no matter what I do. Period. End of story. But you've got to focus on your brand within the brand. Don't I tell you that all the time? What is Sia Nejad doing within the Early Edge brand to stand out? Well, he's called the Counselor of Cash. That matters. He does DFS. That matters. He can do different sports. That matters. So now we call AB our 5-tool player all the time, because he can do it all. Well, you got to be able to do it all now. You can't just be the guy that sits there and reads off the teleprompter. You got to be able to run your own computer. You got to have your lights. You got to have your camera. You got to, everything's changed. But you got to take care of your brand within whatever brand you want to be in. How does that fit in? What does that look like? And that's where you start. That's where you start. And then hopefully, one of the things I enjoy the most about what we get to do is the nicknames, the branding, everything ESPN wouldn't let me do. I do it now. And I have more fun trying to create characters for you guys, because this is all performance. It's real sports, but this is a performance. This is a show. This is not acting, but this is who we truly are. And I think it's awesome. I'm having a ton of fun at it, but there's a certain level of seriousness to it too, because all these people wouldn't show up if we didn't know what the hell we were talking about. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's 100% true. So I have a few questions before I let you go, but one thing I want to punctuate this with, in terms of just getting people on the path to continue to take steps. And I found this in my journey along the way too. Even if you just can't train yourself out of thinking that this isn't for me, that the goal is too unrealistic, do it anyway. Even if you can't trick yourself out of that, do it anyway. And there's two reasons. One is because you're probably wrong. Okay. The other thing is going down that path might lead you to splinter off somewhere that is even better than your original goal in the first place. So, and I genuinely have found that with my own experience where I'm trying to accomplish something long term and it doesn't actually go the way I thought it would. But oh, look over here. Like I fell into this because of the work that people noticed and just the hard work that I was putting in. Things can happen. But if you're sedentary and if you're just deciding not to move forward in any way whatsoever, well, then you got nothing coming to you. You know what I'm saying?
Let's talk about you for a second then. Let's I hate to interrupt you, but
No, go ahead.
let's lay out what you're talking about so people can truly understand it. So you were a lawyer, you were in pharma, then you said, I want to be in the media. So if I would have told you 5 years ago, you'd be doing – the only reason you're not full-time right now is because of the situation, not because of talent or anything else. But if I would have told you, you're working for CBS Sports, you're doing a golf show, you're doing DFS for CBS Sports, you're working with a guy, me, who works basically – I'm doing 10, 12 tournaments this year for the PGA Tour. So there's a very real possibility in the next couple of years you'll be working for the PGA Tour. And 5 years ago, could you have even dreamed of that happening? And now you're here. That's
the thing. It's a good point. You don't know what you don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like you can have a vision, but your vision is limited to whatever your knowledge base and idea base is. So there's plenty more out there that you just simply don't know, but you got to take the steps and continue to take the steps. And then you fall into these things that you say to yourself, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing for me.
You're damn right. And it's a great feeling when you do, because in life, joy is a great, great, great thing. And my son, who just had the lead in the play, he's like, Dad, I'm so proud of myself. I feel so good. And that feeling inside of yourself is nothing that you can imagine. The reason I love this business so much is because it's so enjoyable, because sports means something to me. But we have a guy that watches our show, Sia. And I think he goes by Picks Management, I think is his Twitter handle. And he would tell us daily. He would tweet at me. He'd write me notes and be like, hey, I want to do what you do. I want to be a host of a sports betting brand. And he kept telling me that. And then finally, just last week, he got an audition for a sports betting brand. And he got the job. He'll be doing an MLS. It's going to be a soccer show for a legitimate network. And he started watching us a year ago. And now he's in it because he's doing it because he watched us. And he says, Coach, I want to do what you do. And I think that is super, super cool. And so I said, good luck to you, and we'll see where he goes.
It's a great roadmap. One last thing, Coach, I have a couple more questions for you, but something just struck me in the chat because Sia Nejad, my wife, she's in here, Coach. And I know you know Gigi, and she's performed for the First Cut Pod. She's just an incredible songstress, if that's even a word. She plays the guitar and she sings, and she's just unbelievably good. And then I see Edward Gale in here saying, at Sia Nejad, thanks for letting Sia do all that he does. And I think that's a really astute comment, because if you don't have the support system around you to listen, you don't need everybody to be your cheerleader. Criticism is good too from those around you, but if you don't have people around you that are supporting things that other people think might be crazy, then you're dead in the water. So you got to make a decision. You either give up your dream or you give up the person that you thought was your support system in the first place. And that is truly, and that's not just with your significant other. It's with your friends who might belittle those dreams that you have.
You mentioned you heard me mention I'm divorced, right?
I did.
Yeah. This is the whole reason for it, is because, and I got divorced when I was at ESPN because I was with somebody who wanted to be out front. She literally said, I don't like that you get all the attention. Crazy. I'm now with somebody, as you know, Crystal, who the first thing out of her mouth at 5:30 in the morning, what can I do for you? What can I get you? When I traveled to the Super Bowl last week, I came home busy, all my clothes laid out. My point is not that she does everything for me. The point is she supports me. And so I can focus, because this business, if you want to get into it, it is extremely mentally taxing. You've got to be on point, because if you lose track of what you're saying, it's a lot like this. And so to me, I want my brain clear. You want your brain clear, but also you want to enjoy it. And so have them travel with you. Have them, help you. I mean, I work with her all the time. My goal for her is to have her be a host at the Early Edge or under the umbrella. That's what we're trying to do. But your point is well taken, because it's everything to me. My kids support me. My parents support me, although my mother still doesn't understand why I get paid to talk about sports. But Mom, you're 78. It's okay. And Crystal, at the end of the day, we've been together for a long time. She supports me. And so I don't even have to think about that. And when you don't have to think about that, it frees you up to just focus on the job. I walk in and say, hey, I'm going to be in the office from 5 to 5:45. Cool. I'll start the oven. That's exactly what she said. Cool. I'll start the oven for dinner. Because that's
I like that she led with cool. Yeah. It's enthusiasm. I love it. No, and Coach, I 100%. And you know what's funny about Crystal is that, the few times I've seen her on camera with you, I can tell that that's how she is right off the bat. It doesn't take a poker player to recognize somebody who's just like that. So that's just really cool that you have it, and that any onlooker can kind of recognize that that's the kind of person, kind of teammate that she is. Okay, a couple more questions.
Your teammate too. Yours is an incredible teammate, and that's the thing. If you also got to look at it and say, listen, if this is where I want to go, can they help me get there? Mm-hmm. Do they understand what it takes to get there? Because I watch a ton of motivational videos. Yep. And the one thing I'm never going to do is quit, but it's easy to quit. And it's easy for them to bitch until you want to quit. You got to have somebody that just lifts you up and doesn't allow you to quit. Don't let yourself quit.
That's right. That's 100% right. I got a couple more questions before I let you go. Let me start with this. You're very accomplished. We all know that. I've said it a couple times, but anybody who knows you knows that. Is there a dream or a goal that you have yet to tackle, whether it be short-term or long-term, that you have been saying to yourself, whether it be months, years, or days, this is something I need to do?
Very clear. Very, very easy answer. And I've been very public about it internally at CBS. Part of the reason I left ESPN is because I love golf. And there is a gigantic hole in the media of golf. And I will include my network in this because they know that they're years behind this. But when your number one player since 1997 is a black man, Tiger Woods, how do you not have any diversity on your media teams at the highest level? None. And so part of the reason I wanted to come to CBS is because I knew between NBC and CBS, they had a full PGA Tour schedule. And so this is also a true story, and people listen to this. So 2016, I was sitting down. I knew I didn't want to stay at ESPN, but I wanted to be at the PGA Tour. So do you know what I did, Sia? I sent a note. I found a vice president, just found a name, and I wrote down everything I would fix about the PGA Tour, and I emailed it to him. 3 months goes by, 6, 9, a full year goes by, and all of a sudden I get this email out of nowhere. And I was just getting ready to leave ESPN. It was perfect timing. And that's the way it happens sometimes. This guy said, hey, Coach, sorry, I've been meaning to get back to you for months, but got your email. And I'm thinking, what email? Because it had been a full year. And he goes, we'd love to have you come down here and try, do some PGA Tour events. So that was 2017. And now we're 2023. I'm going to do 12 events so far that I have scheduled this year, including the Korn Ferry Tour, because I love golf. And I feel like I can help the world of golf. And I feel like right now there's a lot of young kids like myself when I was 7, 8 years old that watched TV and said, how come there's nobody that looks like me? Right. That's important. It's important. And in the world of golf, if you truly want to grow the game, then you got to grow how you look at the game. And right now, so that's a long answer to yes, I want to be on Nance's team at the network level. And I'm already working for the network. And I have every single January, I have a conversation with the powers that be. And they're like, Coach, you're the next one up. Well, damn it, I deserve to be the next one up. Plus, I also feel like we could change the level of energy that a golf broadcast has to match 2023. And that's where we're at, and that's my one thing that I still want to accomplish.
Hey, and for the record, there's a Middle Eastern fella that could extend that diversity even more.
It's funny you mentioned that because I talked to them about having a Manning cast. And if people don't know what a Manning cast is, it's just an opposite telecast of the same thing. They do it for Monday Night Football. But why in 2023, when the PGA Tour has 5 betting partners, why don't you have an entire stream? Because to me, and I've told them this, I'm not saying anything here I haven't already discussed with my bosses. I said, how do you grow an audience when there's 20,000 different things to watch? Well, what are people doing? I had somebody literally tear my head off verbally on Twitter when we changed from a featured group of Jordan Spieth to Hideki Matsuyama. Why were they ticked off, Sia? Because they had bet based on our coverage and who was going to be shown in the morning time. So they're like, I bet on Jordan Spieth. And that's my point. If you bet, you're watching. So why wouldn't you lean into the audience that's betting? And I've pitched that. I said, why are we not doing that? And so hopefully, eventually, that day comes, and I want to be here to help lead that charge. I never want to leave CBS. I want to be here for the final 30, 35 years of my career because I can build. And you always look for an opportunity to be a part of something new, build it, and hopefully it's great. And that's what we've done here.
Shout out to Prop Stars. He said opportunity, not propertunity. I know the bat signal goes off anytime that word is uttered. Okay, here's my final question. And this is a question I'm going to ask all my guests. It's a question I asked Greg last week as well. Not super insightful necessarily, but usually I get an interesting response. So if you could thank anybody, well, let's say three people. If there's three people in your life that you could thank, and immediate family not included, dead or alive, for just kind of contributing to the person you are now or the opportunities that you've gained, however you want to contextualize it. Who would those three people be?
One of them would be Todd Grisham. You may or may not know who he is. He's the voice of the zone. Yeah, he does all the big Canelo fights, and Anthony. He's been my best friend for 21 years.
Coach, Todd Grisham is the one who kicked my wife, Sia Nejad, out of the WWE Divas contest. She had made it to the last 12 in, I believe, 2009, and he was the one that literally was in the ring with her saying, basically, you're too short, you got to go.
It's a good thing she wasn't in it 2001, 2002, 2003, and 2004, because your boy would have been the one kicking her out of the ring. I hosted the first 4 years of that. I was the guy. And that was part of what I was telling you I got to do outside of the on-air work is the Diva search, traveling around. It was great. So Todd has showed me a lot of things. I like to think I'm a really great friend. I like to think that I can get past anything. And he's part of the reason for that because we're polar opposites. He's crazy. He loves to travel. He loves to do all that stuff. But literally the things he's done for me and the things I've done for him are more like brothers than best friends. And so he would be one. I would have to say this is a really good question because I can't say family. I can't say Crystal.
And I did say that they could be living or passed on. So it's just something to keep in mind.
So why don't I'll put Stuart and Rock together because I would love to. Rock I can still talk to. Stuart still hits me because, and this is the only time this has ever happened in my life, and I'm sure when my parents pass, this will happen again. But have you ever had a moment in your life where something happened that was so emotional that you could not control yourself emotionally? I was the first show on the air for ESPN Radio the morning that Stuart Scott died. It was a Sunday morning. I had my weekend show. I'm driving in, and we hadn't seen him for months. Because he was a proud guy, and he was down to, I think, under 100 pounds when he passed. He didn't want anybody to see him like that, and I respected that. But he was still one of my heroes, certainly professionally, but then I was friends with him personally. And so we had a bunch of sounds set up on the board so that if for some reason I broke down or I cried, I could just hit an interview of somebody saying something about Stuart Scott. No less than 7 or 8 times, I could not control myself from just crying because it was so much grief, because this was a guy that was way too young, got kicked in the ass by cancer, and there was nothing any of us could do about it. But what I then said after that morning was, man, I got the opportunity to talk about my friend. And at the end of the day in life, I think part of the reason I enjoy this so much is because I know it's only for a finite period of time. So many people get wrapped up in just BS instead of just enjoying what they're doing and laughing. And not everything's going to be fun, but damn it, if you put enough people around you, it can be. So Stuart taught me that. Rock taught me that. And probably the final person, there is a guy named Bruno Lauer. And most people don't know who he is, but he started in the wrestling business at 14 years of age. Google him. I promise you. You talk about the most unique character in the history of wrestling. He bought The Rock his first car for $40. They drove away and then looked in the back seat, and there was a crackhead in the back seat. True story. Wow. Cannot make it up. Because of that, Bruno was Vince's runner. So when Vince needed a steak or anything, that's what Bruno's job was. All day, every day, he's still getting paid by the WWE, and he hasn't been there in 3 years because of COVID. He lives in Walls, Mississippi. He has treated me the same as he treated The Rock. And I remember saying to myself when I got there, I need to do that too. And so he welcomes me into his home, and he's a little tiny white guy who lives on the other side of the tracks in a town called Walls, Mississippi. And if I could say thank you to him, he has no idea what he's done for me. And I want people to Google him too, because you know what he did, Sia? So when The Rock started the Young Rock show that's on NBC, such a hit right now.
Yeah.
So he hired Bruno as a consultant because he was there to tell the proper stories. So they fly him to wherever they're shooting the show, and Rock puts him on camera, and they're doing an interview. It was all fake. And Rock walks up behind him and surprises him and gives him a Ford truck. Whoa. Brand new pickup truck. And he starts bawling. He goes, "Why would you give me this pickup truck, Rock? I've never wanted anything from you." And Rock said, "That's why I'm giving you the pickup truck. You've never asked me for anything." And every piece of chicken, every steak that Vince McMahon or The Rock ever ate came from Bruno Lauer. He was the one that got it. And Rock just gave him a pickup truck. And guess who the first person was he called?
Was it you?
Right here. And that meant the world to me. So I think everybody has people in their lives that are like that. And I've just been very lucky to have some really weird cats in my life. But, man, I love them very, very much.
Well, Coach, I'm very lucky to have you as an awesome cat, weird cat. Either way, I appreciate you being on this show. I appreciate you helping me along with the early edge and otherwise, because you're right. You pointed it out. We have some conversations behind the scenes, and it's not only motivating to me, but it's obviously very helpful for my career as well in terms of guiding me in the direction that I think I need to go. So appreciate you coming on to Sia Nejad Sports, of course. And any last words before we let you go?
Yeah, thank you, first of all. And the reason I'm this way with you is, and I want everybody to hear this, and hopefully you can take away from this as well, is because I want you to constantly understand how valuable you are professionally, how good you are professionally, but what a good dude you are. And we put together a group of people that it doesn't always work the way it works with us. But I want you to know that. And people watching in the chat, whether you're watching this live in February of 2023 or you're watching this in 2028, do that to somebody else in your life. Just one time. Focus on somebody. Say, you know what? Why don't I tell them how good they are? How about I help them prove to themselves? Because the biggest thing in this business, and the reason this entire conversation, what do we talk about? Quitting. Most people don't follow through. But most people don't have anybody there to pick them up and tell them, hey, keep going. Hey, you're almost there. Hey, one more week or one more month. And that's what I try to do with everybody in my life. So selfishly, you can help me. But I'm also a big fan of you personally as a friend. But I know how good you are. And I want people at home to understand how good they are and embrace it.
Coach, I absolutely love it. It's a great way to close the show. Everybody you can follow. Everybody's probably already following Coach, but you can follow him at The Coach Rules. And, of course, you can find him, and that's, by the way, on Instagram and Twitter, but you can find him on The Early Edge, among many other outlets. Like we've talked about it, CBS Sports, the PGA Tour, you name it. Coach is doing it, and he's doing a great job while he does. So thanks, everybody, for joining the show. We actually have another guest. I haven't announced it yet, but we have another guest on Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. A big guest. You're really going to enjoy that one. She's become a good motivating force for me, and hopefully a good friend too. So stay tuned for that. But Coach, thank you for joining the show, and we will see you next time on Sia Nejad Sports. See you.